Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. नहीं सिर्फ वो Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for the session in the Tega Ed Talk series. अभी फिर से देखना. Good morning, everyone. काजोरी आ रहा है आवाज.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for the session in the Tega Ed Talk series. Please come.
Hello, hello, hello. Am I audible? Not audible, right? Hello. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Saturday morning, you are in a learning session. Yeah. Okay. So we are all comfortable here. There are a couple of seats here if you want to walk in. Okay. So this is Tega Ed Talks, third in the series. We're trying to cover various topics from different walks of life. We have had something on sustainability from our industry stalwart. We've had something on Industry 4.0. Next in the series is blockchain. I'm sure you would have all heard about blockchain somewhere or another. But what is it? I'm also very sure not many people would know. Am I right? Okay. So, and then next in the series would be, I mean, like we'll have different topics. They won't be all these hard. There would be something on music, there might be something on art appreciation. And then you're also free to come back and tell us the topic which you feel can be of mutual interest. It can be as simple as parenting, right? Or it can be as complex as some technology which you feel is very, very relevant and we all need to have a common understanding. Yeah. So, a first question or a very, very common question which can come to your mind is that we are in a traditional kind of environment, and what will blockchain do, or what do we have to do with blockchain? So I can give you two examples wherein uh, when I got exposed to this technology, and which after that, and then a lot of other episodes which happened, which tells me that nothing is irrelevant. So first is I mean, like I've spent more than a decade in power sector, and again a very traditional sector, very simple, easy business, no inventory, nothing. You just produce and you sell the power. I mean, like typically called a FD business, but blockchain is implemented there as well in a big way in US, where people even I mean like try to switch on and switch off their lights basis the power surge, so that they can contribute to the overall grid. There are use cases in India wherein government sector has used blockchain, wherein two buildings in a state like UP, where you will think that no technology, it's difficult to get implemented there. They have one of the first use cases in India, wherein two government buildings have solar panels installed. They are using a blockchain pilot to exchange the power between each other. I belong to an agricultural state. We produce maximum number of potatoes and potato seeds, which are sent across the country. So, if I'm not wrong, 60-70% of the potato seeds, I mean, like they originate from Punjab, and everybody across the seed is sold कि ये Punjab से है. So blockchain is implemented there very, very recently. In our fields also now, geotagging is done, so that the end person, they can find out that ये वाला आलू कहाँ से आया है, so that they can pay a premium on that. So that's how I mean, like the technology is getting used at the very grassroots level and has applications everywhere. So very fortunate to have our speaker here. Rashmi will introduce you, I mean like him to you. He's had varied experience. I was just talking to him, and he's told me that because of this, so he's implemented various projects across the globe, and went to an extent that he's not only taking care of technology, but also gets deeper into what the company or the industry is doing, to the extent that he's taught Sharia law to the to the I mean like authorities in the Gulf countries, because they were trying to build the banking system with the help of those laws there. So that's the authority we have here. So Rashmi, give him a please. Let's give him a big hand, and then.
Thank you so much, Bhanu sir, for setting the context for the session today. It's my pleasure to have Mr. Siddharth Durbha, guest speaker for the day. Siddharth is a director with the Digital Risk Strategy and Governance team at KPMG, and he's a seasoned regulatory and risk transformation consultant who comes with around 13 years of experience, consulting experience. He's focused on enabling large banks and insurance firms dealing with technology risk, TPRM, and regulatory compliance. And he has also been part of large risk transformation programs, which is basically involved in uplifting of existing controls and enterprise risk management framework. He is also part of the ISO TC 307 committee, which is involved in drafting standards for blockchain, DLT security, governance, and interoperability. And with this, I would like to welcome Mr. Siddharth and take over the stage and the session today. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Bhanu, Reshma as well. So I'm from Calcutta itself. So Calcutta is my hometown. It's complicated. I would say that I'm from the southern part of the country, born and brought up in Calcutta, married to a Bengali. So my Bengali is pretty decent. So if you say that potatoes are only from Punjab, we take offense. Our Chandramukhi and Jyoti Aloo from Calcutta are equally good. Right. So I'll probably make it interactive. I don't want it to be a monologue. Saturday morning, just because he gave me a call and asked me to come on Saturday, I was like, do I have to wake up in the morning at Saturday at that too at 11? Sorry, I wake up at 12 on Saturdays. But anyway, we'll try and make it. I do know that we do have a very large audience today across different regions of Tega, from South Africa, I don't know, Chile and where all. So thanks for everyone for joining in. The way that we'll probably run this session is, I don't want to bore you with too much of information. We'll keep it interactive. I'll want all of you to participate, and we'll probably take away something at least from the session. At least that would be my hope. The way that we'll run it is, we'll probably give you a brief introduction about what blockchain is, what blockchain is not. Typically, you'll hear that just by introducing new technology, it's not a pill that will do away with all of your problems. And what Bhanu has told me is that we have a bunch of very bright engineers sitting here as well. So I would want to have more questions. We'll also make it relevant to business folks as well. We'll talk about how blockchain can help you in the area of marketing, sales, servicing, and all of that as well. The first thing that we'll do is, I'll want all of you to take out your mobile phones. Not put it back, but please take out your mobile phones. We'll give you 2 questions. We'll do a Menti. If you can all go to menti.com, that's menti.com. Let me just run this. Okay, so all of you can go to menti.com, and you'll need to type in a code that's 771482223. And just type in whatever comes into your mind about what do you know about blockchain. We'll get a word cloud. We just want to see in terms of what is the level of knowledge within the team. It's a bright team, I know, but still we want to see so that we can decide on how much depth we want to go to. It's menti.com. The number is there. It's 771482223. Okay, great. Trust, empathy. That's a new one. Okay. That must be Bhanu. He was the fastest finger first. Sorry? The code is 771482223. Okay. Cryptocurrency, great. Connected, share, lots of information, chain of data, optimize, connected. Okay, great. We will talk about how IoT and blockchain can also be integrated. Security and trust. We'll probably wait for another minute or 2, and we'll jump on to the next question. Share, that's a good one. Network. Okay, NFT. Somebody likes NFT. Has anyone minted NFTs here? Or has anybody bought an NFT? Sorry? You want the code? It's 771482223.
There are 5 seats there. Whoever has not got the code, you can sit there.
It doesn't matter, otherwise I'll go back. People will typically tell you that don't take out your phones. I want all of you to use your phone as well, please. Okay, I think we have a pretty decent response. I think all of you, you've got a very bright team here. I think they don't need a session also. They have most of the points as well, most of the ones that we'll cover at least. So we'll move on to the second one. Okay, just share any name of any organization that you believe is using blockchain. Your competition, your peers, any other website that you use, any other brand that you're aware of. And I'll give you use cases from that particular company or beyond, or from the same industry. Bitcoin, okay, that's nice. Cred will be using blockchain soon. They haven't used blockchain yet. Siemens, yes. Yeah, probably a couple of more. We'll wait. Somebody is trading a lot of crypto. Bhanu, you're giving a lot of bonuses, I believe. Coin DCX. I hope Coal India uses it soon. Awesome. We'll quickly jump into the presentation now, but I think thanks for sharing. It shows that people are aware and you're following this quite keenly. But the first thing that I'll say is cryptocurrency is not the only use case for blockchain, right? Because what you have seen is, if you look at the word cloud, you mentioned about a company like PwC, right, from Infosys, or let's say Walmart. We have got, what else do we have? Siemens. Now, Siemens is a very interesting use case because I think they are in the industrial space. In terms of what they're doing is quite amazing in the blockchain space. We'll share a couple of credentials. We'll talk about what they're doing. Let me just jump back to the presentation. So typically, if you have seen how the web has actually progressed, right? So you had Web 1.0 when it was only about your desktop browser, the old hardy Internet Explorer. Then we moved on to the world of Web 2. And now what's Web 3? So typically, you will be hearing a lot about tokens, DeFi, stablecoins, NFT. But the underpinning of all of this in terms of the Web3 world is going to be data, in terms of data coming in from multiple machines, industrial metaverse, connected devices, and individuals owning the data. For example, today, if you're using a Facebook or a Google or others, there's nothing like privacy because you're actually you're willing away most of your information to a Facebook or to a Google or others in terms of how and what they want to use to. But in the world of Web3, what's going to happen is you're going to own the data. And in terms of customizing, in terms of how do you monetize it, that is something which is going to be in your hands in terms of how can you actually let other organizations control your data. So we'll move on. Cryptocurrency is not the only use case for blockchain. So blockchain is a type of a distributed ledger technology. So when we talk about DLT, DLT is a better term to use than blockchain because blockchain is a specific type of a distributed ledger technology which is used world over. So typically, the primary aspects of blockchain are trust anchors. So if you talk about blockchain, it's based on a cryptographic hash. So there are different type of algorithms which may be used for securing the information and for sharing and for validation of the transactions in a blockchain. So distributed ledger, just consider it to be, I'll use a little bit of a colloquial language here, sorry for that. For example, who knows what a Munimji was in the past? Who or what was a Munimji? Bhanu?
Is the custodian of the money of the owner.
So you typically remember old Hindi movies, somebody wearing with a white hat, writing notes in front of a Sethji, right? So imagine that during the days of the Maratha period or the Mughal period, there were accountants sitting in each district who were making notes of transactions of the treasury, etc., for the government and others. Now imagine that if a copy of a particular transaction or a khata or something was lost, they needed to go through, there's no other way to validate the transactions and others. So why do you put money into a bank, right? So typically it's based on trust. In this particular case, in terms of banking, there are two trust anchors. One is the central bank. Then you have the bank, which has been regulated and is working under the permission which is given by the central bank. And these are the two trust anchors. And that's how, on the basis of which a banking system works. Now, what blockchain does is a particular copy of information, if it is present for all the parties which are involved in the transaction, right? We'll talk about the different types of blockchain, a public, vis-a-vis, a private, and others. So each and every transaction, all the data points which are actually there as a part of the public blockchain. For example, if you want to see the entire set of transactions which have taken place on for Bitcoin over the last 10 years, you can actually download the entire data set into a single hard disk. So all the information is there. But typically, a private blockchain is an implementation wherein it's a permission network. Only peers who are actually a party to a transaction actually can get information to it, and including all of the information that you put up on a blockchain is always encrypted. How is it encrypted and what is what we'll probably look at for the next 5 to 10 minutes. We'll look at the technology behind blockchain, post which we'll jump into use cases. We'll make it more interactive. So for the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'll probably bore you a little bit with the math as well as the technology behind it. If you find it a little bit, if you want to pause me, if you have any questions, feel free. I'm happy to take questions at any point during the presentation. So typically, what are the aspects of blockchain which actually make it what it is, right? So first is, it is shared. It's an immutable ledger. For example, the example that I was giving from a Munimji, imagine that all the Munimjis in India have the same set of information once it is actually entered into a book. Tracking of assets, recording of transactions becomes easy across the entire network. It's decentralized, it's distributed. Each record of the database, there is a particular block. For each and every transaction which happens, a particular data set or a block gets added to the blockchain, hence the name blockchain, right? So each new block consists of a group of transactions that have been added to the end of the blockchain and that have been validated by all the nodes. Now, what do you mean by node? What do you mean by a peer? So these are some common terms that we have heard, right? Probably I'll just go around. What are some of the other common terms that you have heard which have been associated with blockchain? Probably, can I have anyone picking up a hand, like any other term that you've heard which is associated with blockchain? Anything with crypto, whatever you have heard. Anything that you've heard around blockchain, anything. You've heard about crypto, you've heard around scams, I think you've heard about a wallet, right? So how many, has anyone invested in crypto here? You have, right. So we'll probably go back to our young friend here. Just share like whatever you've heard, any other terms that you've heard associated with blockchain or
Bitcoin or cryptocurrency.
any other terms which you have heard?
But that's it. That's it.
Sure. So typically, sorry, I didn't get your name. So like Nirman mentioned specifically that Bitcoin, blockchain and others, these are all types of cryptocurrencies, which is, let's say it doesn't have any intrinsic value. It is a perceived value, specifically because there's a limited number of Bitcoins in circulation. It is a perceived value that people generally have, that it gives it its own value of whatever dollar value it has. Can you build your own coin? Yes. How easy is it? It will take you 15 minutes for you to actually just create your own token or a coin, launch it on a site like Coinbase or others. But it's just that people need to have trust, faith and belief in terms of what type of a token or what you're trying to create. There are examples around IOTA, which is actually a system which creates tokens for specifically doing research in terms of Internet of Things, and they were creating Internet of Things across all connected devices. We'll probably ask a friend here who's in a pink t-shirt in terms of what he has heard about blockchain. Any other use cases that you have heard of? No other use cases. Okay. We'll probably talk about what's beyond crypto then. So typically, some of the core components of blockchain are the distributed ledger that we spoke about, key encryption, right? So in terms of so we do have a lot of people with an engineering background here and others as well. Does anybody want to take in terms of how does email get sent, or how do you keep your email safe? So you typically have a password, right? You have multi-factor authentication, you have a password. So what's behind that is encryption. So typically we'll talk about what type of encryption actually keeps the data safe. For example, whenever you keep your data either on AWS or others, you use a technique called AES 232 or other cipher key for actually keeping the data safe. Now typically there's a specific class of algorithms which are used for keeping the data safe. This is a SHA-2 standard. It's a hash graph which is actually used for keeping data safe in terms of blockchain technology. We'll talk about what it does, what's the math behind it as well. A smart contract. Uh, Typically, a smart contract, you will have a believe that it's like a file. It should be something exotic, but it's not. A smart contract is something very similar to a simple program. You give it an input, it will give you an output. But you can actually input a logic into it. Let's say tomorrow, you want to pay your bill, like Bhanu had mentioned, the example that he had taken from the power grid. So typically what is going to happen is if you have solar, let's say solar heaters, or if you have a solar farm, let's say if you keep a couple of photovoltaic cells on top of your building, and if you're producing more energy than what you consume in your own building, you can actually sell it back to the grid. So a lot of state governments in India, including the West Bengal government and others, they've come out with plans specifically wherein if you have a wind farm or if you have photovoltaic cells in your building, you can sell power back to the grid. So blockchain is actually can be used for tracking back in terms of how much power has been generated. And if you have a smart contract, so the input for a smart contract here would be simply that if you're sending back, let's say, 10 units of power back to the grid, you can actually program that to send money, whatever is the selling rate, into your bank account. So without any intermediary, without any people being involved in the entire transaction or process, a particular activity can happen. So the input here being specifically the power that is being generated, and you are selling back the excess power to the power grid again. The whatever is the agreed value or the perceived value between and the government, you can actually send that back. So that's an example of a smart contract. We'll definitely talk about smart contracts with respect to Tega in terms of where you can use it and how. We'll come to that. Just do a time check for me in terms of every 5 or 10 minutes. We'll talk about consensus mechanism right now. So a couple of minutes back, I told you about how a Munimji can actually make transactions or make copies of transactions, right? Now, what is the trust factor here? You do have the evil Munim working under a Seth who's trying to make more money or take money away from you in the form of a money lender or others, right? So here, the trust factor for consensus is you actually have a lot of nodes. A node is nothing but, let's say, imagine a network. For example, if you want to have a consortium of banks in India who want to validate transactions. So let's say the way that you make a payment today is your account gets validated by your bank. The bank tells whichever application it is, whether it's UPI or it is RTGS or others, you first authenticate yourself to the bank that I have a valid account, I have done my KYC, and I'm actually sending out money to someone else that I know or is a recipient that I'm aware of. And if it doesn't happen, if there's a fraudulent transaction, you go and complain to the bank, right? So in this particular case, the bank is the trust factor wherein it is validating your identity, validating the transaction, and also validating whether the third party to whom you're sending the money has a valid account or not, and the money transfer happens. Using consensus mechanism, there are different types of consensus mechanisms. We'll talk about it. Many of you and a friend there would have heard about mining, right? So you might have heard about a lot about Bitcoin mining and others. So that was a specific type of known as proof of work, wherein a mathematical solution had to be found for problems. For example, for each and every transaction to be validated in the Bitcoin network, you had a mathematical problem where these rigs were actually solving. You needed a lot of mathematical or computational power for actually validating those transactions, and it was quite the power consumption was quite high. So there were concerns around ESG concerns around climate risk, the amount of power which was being consumed. So at a certain point in time, in a country like Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, where typically, for example, the number of people that you find for every square kilometer here is about 100 or 200. In a country like Kyrgyzstan, you drive for about 100 kilometers, you will find 2 people. So there they were using solar plants, wind power plants, coal-fired plants for actually setting up mining rigs. So in the middle of nowhere, you had $1 million mining equipment for mining Bitcoin. But that is typically coming to an end right now because many of the parties, etc., are now moving into other types of consensus mechanisms, which is nothing but a ways and means of validating a transaction in a blockchain network by solving a mathematical problem. A wallet is nothing but a place where you can actually keep a particular smart contract. a Bitcoin is nothing but a smart contract. So any type of cryptocurrency that you might have heard of is a wallet. So tomorrow when we actually create a smart contract for Tega for any particular purpose, we'll not call it a wallet, we'll call it something else, but that's the in principle concept. We'll show you what a blockchain is right now. What is a node? I've been talking about it. A node is a computer within the system. Each node is having a copy of the data, but in a secured format. So when you transact or actually do a transaction, the same information is published across the entire network. So instead of your information going only to one party, all the parties in the transaction, so all of you remember a telephone exchange, a BSNL exchange wherein people used to call, the call used to be connected to multiple people just in a hub and spoke model in terms of wherever you are. So in a similar fashion, the data is actually spread across the entire network. The same copy of the transaction or the same copy of the data is there with everyone, but only the recipient who's actually supposed to look at the information can open the transaction because of the private key that he has. So there are two types of keys in encryption, a public key and a private key. So typically if you're putting in a password, a portion of the password will be there with the service provider who is actually going to secure your information. And with the private key, it would be possible for you to decrypt the information again once you've encrypted it. A block in a transaction, post each transaction, a particular hashed data element or attribute gets added onto the blockchain. Minus we have spoken. Any questions so far? Okay. So we will tick off each of these. So we have spoken about what a distributed ledger is. What is a proof of work? I'll not bore you with certain aspects. I'll jump certain things here. So on cryptography, as I mentioned, there's a private key, there's a public key, and there's hashing. So typically, the methodology that we're using for blockchain is known as SHA-2 standard, which is used for encrypting the information in a blockchain. So 3 examples here. The private key, it's used as the same key as a receiver. The sender has it. It's your own private key. You're not supposed to share it. Whenever you've heard of a crypto hack or a blockchain hack, so what's happened is the passwords or these blockchain passwords or your wallet passwords were actually kept on a unsecured server. And if people actually get access to it, and if it is not encrypted properly, that's when people can actually swindle away or wipe out money from the wallets of the exchange or others. Sorry. I'll just probably show you a video in terms of how it works. If it doesn't work, we'll show you from here itself. Otherwise, I'll skip that for now. It's a little bit small. If you're not able to see it, I'll probably show you a bigger picture of what a blockchain, what a block looks like, right? So specifically, how does it work? You initiate a transaction where there are multiple parties to transact because you cannot do a transaction with yourself, right? All the transactions are recorded, including transaction date, timestamp. All the data factors are actually there in the blockchain. So what it also does is it gives you a health status, a check in terms of if one of the nodes is no longer there, the other nodes in the network come in and take the, so let's say that in case of a post office, right? For example, you've got different pin codes, right? For example, what's the pin code for Bidhan Nagar here? So what's the pin code here? 91, right? For example, if this particular post office is no longer working, right? So the other one, which is 92, 93, or the GPO, somebody will actually take over. So it's the same in a blockchain as well, wherein if one of the nodes, which is a computing center, is actually not working, the other nodes in the network take over because they have the same sets of data sets and others. And if tomorrow this particular node were to come back, all the information, that is all the transactions which have taken place till date, will get synced automatically. We've spoken about the consensus mechanism, which is nothing but a typical type of a mathematical problem in terms of how and what you will actually do to validating a particular transaction, identity of the party, and adding a blockchain to the overall series of transactions. uh, data on blockchain is immutable. If you want your information to be deleted from blockchain, it can be done. So specifically how it can be done is, these are known as chameleon blocks. So for example, for each and every transaction that is there, it is immutable, because once you want to delete a particular transaction, the blockchain gets distorted. So people will know that something has happened in that particular point or a particular transaction. So the way it is done is, a similar blockchain, a similar block of data is actually embedded in the blockchain for the same space, saying that a particular transaction has been deleted. So if somebody tells you that blockchain is completely immutable, there are ways and means of doing it, but we'll probably park that for a later date. But for all practical knowledge, blockchain information, once it's there on the blockchain, it will always remain per se, because a copy of that transaction would be there with typically all the parties. This is what a blockchain looks like. So typically, you may have a particular data set, right? So I was talking about the specific algorithm which is used for encrypting data. So what it looks like is, you have a particular number. So any input that you give, that is again used as a encryption key for encrypting the data. So what you'll be looking at is a series of numbers, or and if you want to hack this particular type of data set, you will probably need a quantum computer, because if you want to use a brute force algorithm in terms of trying all the permutations, combinations of actually trying to decrypt the data for getting the private key or others, it will take you about 200 or 300 years or more, but you may still never get an answer. But with the advent of quantum computing, so you will believe that quantum computing is in the realm of imagination, but it is not. Quantum computing is actually available as a service from AWS, IBM, Azure, and others as well. So quantum computing uses the principle typically wherein of duality. For example, when you have a couple of particles, when you're talking about particles at a quantum level, they're all entangled. It is known as quantum entanglement. We'll talk about it on a later date, perhaps, some of the future sessions. But that's one threat that people are still trying to see, how does it impact blockchain? But still it's not been used widely. But you have quantum encryption as well, but probably we'll see blockchain with quantum encryption sometime in future. So this is how it works. So request is sent from A to B. B sends it across to pretty much everyone in the network. So it's like a broadcast message. So it's like your auntie in your building who likes to see what you guys are doing and probably let all the other aunties in the building know what's happening. Nothing against the ladies in the building. I was just taking an example. We have a lot of uncles who also do PNPC. So for you, Bhanu, PNPC in Calcutta means Porono in the Poro Chacha. कोई इनको समझा देना उसका मतलब क्या होता है? समझ में आ गया आपको? Suppose that data has to be validated. So we have validation because these transactions are validated using a mathematical key where the identity of the sender, for example, in this particular case, A is validated. In case of a traditional channel, it would be your bank, Reserve Bank of India, and others which actually hold the information validate. But in this particular case, all the parties have your information and they are validating whether you are a genuine person or not, and whether you're allowed to carry out a transaction. So in a private network, so let's say that, I'll give you an example. Airbus, Boeing, I'm not sure how many of you know how complicated it's to actually build a plane. So Airbus actually sources components from close to 72 countries and across close to 4,000 vendors for making a single Airbus. We happily go and sit in a A320, fly off to a destination, never thinking about what's actually making the entire plane work. And they use blockchain for actually keeping track of all the components in terms of provenance. Where is the product coming in from? Whether it's a genuine product, whether it's the right product, because chips are of the same type, wires are of the same type, and it has to be type rated for a particular type of aircraft. I know that Tega is also working on predictive maintenance. I believe you use a lot of IoT in your devices, right? So typically, this will be a very interesting use case for you from Airbus. Sorry, I'm just quoting names. I'm not supposed to as well at times, just between the confines of this room and for Tega people. Airbus uses a cloud-based data lake, wherein each and every aircraft which is flying in the world today, it sends out details of the health of the aircraft in terms of whether it needs any servicing, is it gonna fail, what is the level of stress it's taking, So the airline that you're traveling with may or may not track your aircraft because it takes a lot of money to actually use satellite, let's say geostationary satellites for tracking aircraft over the seas and oceans. But Airbus does track each and every aircraft, each and every component which goes into a plane. And it runs massive analytics to actually try and tell you when is it going to fail, when does it require maintenance, more and so. What we've also seen is there are certain customers. I'll show you the use case that Shell has actually put up in the public, wherein they've used blockchain for creating a digital passport for all equipment. So Shell, as you know, is one of the largest organizations globally in terms of the ENR space. They have a lot of engineering capabilities in-house for pipeline development, for their refineries and others. So that will give an example of how they've actually used predictive maintenance for some of their plants as well. We'll come to that after this. We'll come to that video after this. So the chain is what we have shown you here in terms of how the data gets added. So after each transaction, so after block 2, block 3 gets added. That's the name from where it gets us blockchain. So blockchain gives you trust. It's immutable. Transparency, because everybody has a copy of the data. Enhanced security, because trying to hack into a blockchain is difficult. Can it be done? It can be under certain conditions, but in general, when compared to other platforms or other technologies, it's easier. What's the difference between a public and private blockchain, right? So public example is specifically around Bitcoin, whatever else it is. Does anybody need a break for 5 minutes? Or we'll just wrap up. I'll show you one video and then we'll probably take a break for 2 minutes. So examples of private blockchain. So there are different type of platforms. So you might have heard about a name called Hyperledger, Corda, Ethereum, lot of these. So these are all different types of blockchain platforms. Underlying technology can also vary greatly. So if somebody tells you that I'm a blockchain expert, I'm not. I'm also learning every day because there are close to, at last count, I've seen 600 different platforms, and it's humanly not possible for us to know all the platforms. So I think we're all learning every day. It's an evolving technology. Consensus, I'll probably try and tell you in terms of why do we need consensus. To typically avoid double spend, this was a principle taken from Bitcoin in terms of not having the same transaction done twice. For example, you don't want to give money twice for a same transaction, right? So that's why you need to have a transaction to be validated by other parties in a network so that a transaction is only being recorded once. That's the simple concept of consensus. What are the different type of consensus mechanisms? Just to give you a flow in terms of the complexity of the space, right? We have got node to node. We have got proof of work, which is what is used in Bitcoin. Your proof of stake. So you might have seen in papers that Ethereum has now moved to proof of stake. That is typically a way of showcasing ownership. So while we believe that blockchain should be decentralized, it is actually quite centralized because for showcasing proof of stake, you need to own tokens, etc., and large authorities, right? For globally, it's been seen that 5 or 6 major organizations, exchanges are holding Ethereum. So it's again a topic of discussion in terms of how do we make it safe. So other principles are being applied there. We'll probably park it for a separate session. We have got delegate proof of stake. You have platforms like Graphene, Steam, BitShares, leader-based consensus. So you'll see a lot of names that you might have not seen here. So PBFT is Byzantine fault tolerance. That's again another type of mathematical problem. But just Google and see what was the Byzantine generals problem. So if you want to do it on your phones, it's an interesting story for you to just read in terms of how strategy and mathematics was actually used for winning a war probably 400 years back, if anybody is a history buff. Yeah, so it is a complex space. Now for the fun time, probably. Okay, the major stuff is done, right? In terms of what, lot of math, we've seen a lot. Just remember, what's it used for? It enhances security. It can increase efficiency and speed. For example, wherever you have a requirement for a data set to be kept safe, it's a multi-party ecosystem. You don't want to do reconciliation. So reconciliation mapping, transaction validation, all of that can be done with blockchain. Uh, it can automate a lot of things. If you have legacy systems, can we integrate that with API-based platform blockchain? Answer is yes. There are ways and means of doing it. What it is definitely not is a single pill that will do away with your problems, because if you were to streamline your process and use blockchain, it will give you better results. We'll give you one use case right now. I'll just play a video from Shell. I'll try and fast forward it. It's a 3-minute video. Do you want to do it after the break or before the break? Video it as well. So, so this is again talking about how Shell.
Are in some way transforming their processes with digital technology. However, when it comes to processes that reach across company borders, our industry supply chains still rely heavily on paperwork and manual handovers. This can lead to inefficiencies, like delays, high costs, and room for errors. Introducing a decentralized digital passport, where each piece of equipment is assigned a unique ID, and all actions throughout the lifecycle of that piece of equipment are linked to this. Thus, creating an immutable log of events visible to the relevant participants in the supply chain. In order for the many parties within our supply chains to transact with one another in a secure and fully digital way, we chose a decentralized solution. Using an open source blockchain protocol, we created a platform that is commonly shared across participating companies. We ran a pilot with 4 of our key supply chain participants: Flowserve, Worley, Bureau Veritas, and Vental. We tracked valves from order through fabrication and inspection to delivery to site, whereby we focused on milestones as well as inspection planning and execution. The digital passport can be expanded for other use cases, such as track and trace, pay per use, logging maintenance updates, and tracking the CO2 footprint of equipment all the way up to decommissioning. We're looking to expand this beyond the pilot and allow any player in the industry to use the decentralized.
Right. So this is a live example of one of the. So I respect Shell because they use technology extensively. They're people friendly. But if you were to look at a similar use case, right, from a Tega perspective, now typically I was talking about predictive maintenance in terms of how Airbus is actually working towards it. So if you want to look towards client delight, so you're already using IoT. Now IoT can be integrated with blockchain to actually create a provenance of pretty much all the products in terms of where did it originate, what were the product specifications. When you live in a world of hyper customization, because no customer is the same, while you have standard equipment, do we have customized products at Tega as well? We do, is it? Maybe others are aware of it, or probably if you want to share with us in terms of what type of product, I'll probably give you an example of where and what we can probably do.
Actually, our products goes to the mining sector. Most of the products are tailor-made. So whatever the dimension are over there, we actually customized and made it. And overall, we are a customized product maker.
So if I just understood that correctly, you do get a request from your customers for customization of standard products and platforms that you have, right from rollers, equipment for actually filtering across the entire life cycle of the mining process, depending upon the type of client that you have, right? And this would require working with designers, working with client, signing off from, let's say, your engineering team, your manufacturing team, your finance team. You'll not start the work unless at least you're paid something, right? So in terms of all of this, I believe they'll be using lots of systems. You'll be using a lot of emails. There'll be a lot of stuff which is happening in the back end. Now, imagine a platform. So simply, and whenever dispute happens, what happens? नहीं मैंने नहीं किया, उसने किया, आमी करेनी, उन्हें बाबू की जिज्ञेस करबेन, right? So specifically, all of that will also happen. So what we can definitely use blockchain for is having a seamless platform in terms of one, automating the entire data flow as well as sign-offs, right? So you will have smart contracts where the next program will be triggered only if somebody within the organization is actually approving it. So there's an audit trail of each and every step. So for example, if you want to link, if the customer wants to see whether the product is actually moving through, how much time will it take, he'll not call you guys. He'll actually link it back to a camera, he'll link it back to probably a dashboard, which will actually tell him in terms of what life cycle status is the product in. Has it moved from the design stage? Is it there on the shop floor? Where is it being shipped? What type of container? We'll actually take you through an example specifically for this. Another video where KPMG has actually created a tool for another oil and gas firm in terms of looking at from production till utilization. And we'll also take two use cases, one from the agro industry in terms of, it's a large FMCG major in terms of what they have done, how did they reduce cost in terms of shipping and others, and we'll also focus on product quality. We'll also take case studies from other industries, typically banking and others, so that you can actually understand blockchain is being used across the spectrum. For all of you who don't know, the rupee, there will be a digital rupee which will be coming up soon. So that is known as a central bank digital currency. So typically, the way it will work is soon, there'll be two types of digital currency. So specifically, one will be a wholesale CBDC. The other would be a retail, wherein you will be getting a digital wallet from your bank perhaps, and you'll be able to send, receive money in the form of digital coins. That is something which will be issued by RBI soon. So trials are on right now with 9 banks in India, which is HSBC, HDFC, ICICI, SBI. They're all working around settlement. So typically, government bonds which were traded between banks, the cycle time was reduced from a couple of days to a couple of minutes only. So the entire perception of movement, fast money. So because money is always, money is not free. For banks, banks are in the business of making money. For example, they raise money from you, they give you interest, but at the same time, they also invest in financial markets. They give out loans. So if money is actually lying idle in the central bank account or in other accounts, they're losing time. So time is money, money is time, right? So typically that's what they look at in terms of making money. And the introduction of CBDC, which is again based on blockchain, will actually revolutionize the entire payment space. For example, today if you have to send money to your entity, anybody from the finance team here? Perfect. Okay, how do you transfer funds to your entities of Tega, let's say in South Africa, Chile, for large transactions, and how do you, there's a lot of transaction cost involved, right? So can you just tell our friends here in terms of what are some of the activities that you do? You pay money for M&A, money for paying salaries. How do you typically transfer money to other entities outside?
We generally transfer funds to our bank accounts, which are being maintained at different locations from bank via the SWIFT code, and from there the salaries are being paid. SWIFT is basically just for functions like the IFSC codes or the MICR codes which we have in India. For foreign transaction, we are using SWIFT codes.
Your name, please?
Sort of.
Thanks for that, Saurav. So specifically, he's told you, given you an example where international money transfer is happening. There are different ways and means of transferring money. So one of them is SWIFT. So SWIFT is an interbank settlement system for settlement of securities, transferring money between banks. So the way it happens is the large banks in India, right? For example, State Bank of India or an Indian Overseas Bank or some of the larger banks, they will have an account with a primary bank, which would be the settlement bank in that particular country. So the way it happens is there are multiple parties which are involved. So let's say if you have an account with State Bank of India, you may, or if let's say a smaller bank, let's say Allahabad Bank, it's no longer there, but let's say if you apply, they would have sent a request to State Bank of India, which is the nodal bank for settlement for Forex and others in India. Then they make a request to JP Morgan. JP Morgan is the primary bank in India, foreign bank, which does almost 75% of the Forex transactions in India, wherein we're investing money, bringing in dollars, or sending dollars or receiving dollars for international trade and transaction. From there, it again talks to a smaller bank, which is the correspondent bank there, and then the target bank where you may have an account, or a third party with whom you're interacting may have an account. So just look at the number of players who are there. So it typically takes you anywhere between 2 to 3 days for confirming a transaction via SWIFT. Now imagine that you're able to do it within 30 seconds at a fraction of the cost. Sort of, any idea about how much money do we spend for each transaction, or you pay transaction fees, right? Do you want to just tell the team in terms of what are typically pricing like for Swift? Like any idea?
Not exactly. I would like to don't have any idea, but the cost which we bear for receiving money is around, say, around $30, $40. It may per transaction. Yeah.
So that's a lot of money. So when you're doing thousands of transactions or multiple transactions, let's say for a large organization, it adds up, right? So the overall cost of transaction can be brought down by using blockchain. So that's an example we'll talk about in terms of how intra-company netting as well as transfer of money across cross-border can actually happen. Sorry, I logged out. Can someone just hold it for a minute? I'll just show you one more video before I come back to this particular example. One second.
Digital Ledger Services. A producer employee logs into the application on their mobile device. The user accesses the product's dashboard to see the list of petroleum products and their status. We click on the product to review the product attributes. Once reviewed, the employee initiates the certification.
So this is an example specifically from the lubricants industry. What we're trying to showcase is right from production till consumption in terms of what all data. It shows you integration with IoT. It will show you traceability, let's say payment happening, tracking in real time. This is something that will show you, and this is something that you can probably consider for organizations of similar size or similar industry, but this is something which can be just true for other use cases across the broader industry as well.
Process. We see that the product status on the dashboard has been changed to certification in progress. The certifier logs in and sees the product that requires inspection in the product dashboard. The certifier inspects the product to confirm its existence and accuracy and proceeds to certify the product. We now see that the product has been certified. It is now ready to be transported.
So there's a lot of gibberish that you see on screen, right? For example, DCBD, whatever it is, that's actually a transaction confirmation. So typically it's the key, transaction key. For Bitcoin and for other transactions, if you want to validate that, there is something which is known as a blockchain explorer, wherein if you were to just go in and type this, you will get to see the transaction. So depending upon the type of platform that you use, you can actually track and trace the entire transaction in terms of who are the parties to it. It will be encrypted, but you'll at least get to know whether the transaction has been confirmed or not. So using the same key, we are going to see how a customer is going to track this particular transaction. And he's going to know, and this is going to be unique for each and every transaction. So let's say if you buy a bottle of, let's say, lubricant, engine oil or something, you know where it has come from, whether it's been tampered, whether it's been transported, where is its origin, what is it used for, etc.
The product also appears as certified on the producer employee's product dashboard. We now have the option to initiate freight. The freight user logs in. Freight process is initiated by scanning the product, which auto-populates freight information. A digital token now represents the product on the blockchain. The freight status has been changed to freight in progress. product progresses on its journey, we see a history of location and status updates. All key events recorded by IoT sensors and GPS is recorded on the blockchain.
So if you see here, it can be different type of IoT devices which are integrated here. So specifically, you've got a temperature sensor, you've got GPS. It's actually looking at its position, what is the status. For example, it's telling you whether the door of the container or the shipment in which it's been transferred is locked or not, has somebody tampered with it or not, what is the temperature, etc. Right? So you can have more and more sensors. If you have more connected devices, all of that information can be put onto your cloud or onto your blockchain as well. Whatever you want, that can be put in. And if you want any specific action to be done, so let's say that this is an inflammable substance, right? It's an engine oil. Or let's say if you're transferring CNG. Now, if you want, let's say the police services or the fire services to be intimidated that there is actually something which is wrong. As soon as the temperature of the container, if it were to raise above 100, or above the point of combustion for that particular liquid or whatever it is carrying, the smart contract can actually call the fire services or others also. So any input, relevant output can be programmed into a smart contract.
Out of parameter conditions are recorded and notifications are sent.
So here at this particular point, you'll see that the temperature is too high. So the sensor is actually letting us know that it's not right. Something can happen to the container or to the, let's say if you're carrying out vaccines, right? So typically the vaccines that you got here, whenever it was being shipped by Moderna or by Pfizer and others, they were actually using blockchain to actually track to see whether the temperature of some of these vaccines was being maintained or not. Because if it was to reach a temperature of above 35 degrees, the vaccines that you were taking would not be effective. So in India, in certain cases in rural parts of India, in Bihar, in Nagaland, some of the places where it's very hard to reach during the time of monsoons, right? What they found was people had more cases of COVID, although they had taken the vaccine. That was specifically because they had taken it in ice box. It was not even a proper, let's say, device or a refrigerant to actually take the vaccines to. So these kind of systems can be used during vaccination drives and others also.
To respective parties. The buyer logs in and sees the status of all products. We note that the product has been shipped. The buyer can select product provenance to view product origination details.
So this will give you information of which company. For example, if you were to use this in your particular case, it will tell you which plant, what were the components which were used, as well as where did it come from, which batch, what was the ID of the particular product. So if a person wants to know any information about the entire history of the particular platform solution, all of that can be tracked and traced.
We see the buyer has access to the same freight history as the producer and freight company, from origination to its current location. The buyer is alerted to out-of-parameter conditions for the product. The buyer sees a visual map of the entire freight journey as well as the current location of the freight.
There is an insurance issue. So Saurav, you want to tell us specifically in terms of how does a letter of credit work, or for that matter, how does like insurance work? For example, if you're shipping out any product, a major product to your plants in South Africa, you do take insurance, right? So typically, how does a letter of credit work? Ankita? Or anyone. So typically, I'll take it.
So letter of credit is basically when, for example, we want to make sure that the party to whom we are selling the material, they do not default on their payment. So it's a certificate, or it's an obligation they are giving it to the bank that we are going to pay this supplier the entire amount of money after a certain period of time with respect to such clauses, and then the bank is the mediator here, and there will be two parties, the buyer and the seller, and that's how it happens.
Perfect. I think that's a good answer. And specifically, what information do you need to share in turn, right? You need to share details of product specification. When are you shipping out, so that people can track it. And as soon as the person actually receives the product, he will let the bank know that I have received the product from this particular company, and the payment can go off. Now, imagine the number of touch points. A lot of documentation has to be shared in the form of bills, way bills, then GRNs, and a lot of other things, right? So typically, all of that process can be automated. So the entire process of ops can be reduced further to a couple of minutes. So what will happen here is, in this particular case, you're seeing that because the temperature of the container was not maintained, this information is being shared with the insurance company. Insurance will get triggered because specifically the manufacturer had taken an insurance for shipping this overseas. So if this particular container is not maintaining the temperature or whatever it is due to whatever conditions, you'll not bear a loss because the insurance company has been notified on time. They're getting all the parameters, all the details, and the insurance claim also gets triggered automatically. And in this particular case, if this were to be linked back to a LC or other banking system, as soon as the product is delivered, the smart contract can trigger the payment in real time from your buyer's bank to your account. Now, do you believe this is in the realm of imagination? It's not. Currently in India, 14 banks are running pilots as a national consortium for actually automating the entire LC process, so that more and more documentation, all of that, everything can be triggered. So blockchain adoption specifically in the financial services space in India, like in the electricity boards, what Bhanu mentioned, it's all happening here. And specifically in West Bengal, land records are being digitized in the form of blockchain, so in the form of smart contracts. So very soon in future, what you will see is your khata, right? For example, the land holding that you have for your property, it will be put up on blockchain so that nobody can actually falsify the information. That's happening in West Bengal as well. Time check, probably should we take more questions now, Bhanu, or how much time do we have? I'll just take another 5 minutes. Yeah. I'll take you through to another use case. Let's finish this particular one, and so how many of you know about metaverse or digital twins as well? I believe you had a session in the prior days, right? So was the same audience or?
Yeah, same audience. So, yeah, but I don't know. Digital twins, do you remember anything from the previous presentation? Is it cloning?
Okay, what do you mean by cloning in the industrial sense? What do you mean by cloning for others who don't understand cloning? Let's finish this, we'll come to it.
At freight exchange points where upon receipt of the product, smart contracts will automatically execute and settle based on contractual agreements. Out-of-bound conditions are automatically factored into the total settlement costs.
Right? So we'll go on to the next one. So these are a couple of other examples that I was giving. Specifically, let's say it can be used for carbon accounting. So all of you have heard about your carbon footprint, ESG, etc. For example, in your manufacturing plants, if you're actually reducing your carbon footprint, basically it means that if you're reducing the amount of emissions, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, whatever the gases are, you can actually make money out of that as well. How is that? So in the international market, due to the Kyoto Protocol and others, so typically there are carbon targets wherein, for example, India has actually promised to the world, global community, that we will be carbon neutral or carbon negative by 2030. So specifically all manufacturing plants and others which are actually reducing their emissions and saving the planet, they get carbon credits. For example, 1 ton of carbon which is sequestered, which means you're either taking it out of the environment or you're preventing it from emissions from coming out into the open, you can make money. So in the international market, 1 ton of carbon that you typically save if it is actually verified properly and sold in the European Union, you can sell it for about $60 to $70. So that's a lot of money if you're actually having manufacturing plants across the region, right? So all of the trading emissions, it needs to be audited. So using blockchain, you can actually track your emissions via IoT sensors and others in terms of what is your actual amount of emissions. Now Volkswagen, anybody drives a car, Volkswagen car here? Amazing, you love Volkswagen. Okay, what happened to Volkswagen in the US?
In US,
Yes.
yeah, they had a huge trust debacle.
What was that?
I'm not too aware. I think engine, some fraud with the average or something like.
It was related, but
Yeah. So what Volkswagen they did they tuned the report the report of the emissions, the particles which are actually getting emitted, and there are certain limits and levels. Yeah.
may I have your name, please?
Mrinal.
So a big round of clap for Mrinal as well as for Bhanu. 5 points for him and 10 points for him.
Mine was Toyota case wherein they fudged the average.
आप Volkswagen की गाड़ी रखते हो, आप Toyota की बात कर रहे हो? हाँ. So specifically, both of them are correct. So it was an example of greenwashing, wherein the regulator, the US EPA, right, the Environmental Protection Agency, had fined Volkswagen close to over $10 billion, specifically because they had, let's say, fraudulently misreported the emissions that they were having. So you need to have a complete audit trail because for projects which actually are green, funds are actually available at a lower interest rate. For example, from the global banks, multilateral agencies, you can get loans at 0.5 bips or 6 bips above the erstwhile LIBOR. It's no longer LIBOR, it's called Sonia, a lot of other things. And now Sonia is not the name of a girl that we want to meet. It's the name of the new interest rate regime globally, similar to LIBOR. That's something which Saurav will tell you later. Sorry, I'm picking on you. Your name is Easy and you're from the finance team, right? So different use cases. I'll probably share the slides with you later. You can just go through it. So we're talking about connected marketplaces, let's say tracking of carbon, crops, lot of cases, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is right from financial services, engineering parameters to ESG parameters, blockchain is being used across the spectrum. Yeah, this is another example of a refiner. It was a Middle East based refiner in terms of how complex those activities were. They were facing issues across supply chain, payments, vendors, everything. So this was streamlined by using blockchain. Simple process, right? Complicated flow. Post blockchain, it becomes simpler. We have already seen a demo of something similar, so we'll skip this. Okay, mining. In mining, traceability is again important because specifically, many a time ores are combined. For example, if you have got ore coming in from a particular mine, they do a bulk in terms of combining ores from other producers, etc., and selling it to people outside. So traceability of that is an important example of how blockchain is being used in the broader mining industry. This is again from a World Economic Forum website. I didn't make this, so sorry, it's not nice. You can complain to WEF. Yeah, so in terms of use cases, I'll probably just jump. There's more about OEMs, how you can actually track and trace provenance. We've already seen that. Let me see, what else do we have? This was a example for a FMCG major, wherein the primary problem for them was they had a lot of vehicles and they had master data sitting across 14 different CRM systems. Every time data was being updated for making payments, purchase orders, whatever else it is, it was a very complicated process. So what we did was disparate systems being connected by a blockchain, tracking and ensuring that the same data set was available across all the subsidiaries and others, actually enabled this particular company to save money in terms of fleet, trying to look at when orders were passing on, as well as reducing the overall cycle time for paying vendors and others to a fraction of what it was. So the overall cycle time was reduced to a day or two instead of the 21-day cycle that they were using. I'll probably share this with you guys later. Bhanu, do you want to see this or I'll do it later? I'll come to the meta bit right now. It's a little bit बहुत high dose हो गया, heavy stuff का. We'll come to the fun stuff. I'll jump the KPMG stuff also. One second. I think maybe since we have 15, we'll take questions. Maybe if you have questions, how this can be implemented
In your specific department. I mean, it can be PMGs, it can be finance, it can be operations, purchase, supply chain, with whatever you have understood. You can bounce off if you have any questions. That would be better. We have the person here, he has multiple implementations across various industries. Like even sales, with whatever you have understood, where do you see this adding value? And that that would be anybody.
Yeah, can you just cite an example where you have implemented this blockchain technology in the finance department, which has integration with SAP?
So typically, if you are aware of fund transfer pricing, right? Intra-company netting, that's one example where it was used. LC is a typical process that we have used. The other example that I was giving you from the FMCG major, it was they were using SAP, Salesforce, pretty much all the CRMs. They had 14 different CRM systems, and that was an example where the MDM, the master data management, was actually disparate. So people used to upload vendor information and all of that across different streams. So typically, given the number of touch points, given the number of finance functions which were there in the subsidiaries at a group level, we tried having all of that in a single platform via smart contracts and a single audit trail, so that one, all the P2P, all the processes, etc., were streamlined depending upon the use case. So we use a combination of low-code, no-code platforms for connecting the last mile connectivity, and blockchain wherever it was required specifically for provenance, transaction, audit trail, and automating some of the payouts, right? For example, I'll give you an example where the payout for receiving an input. So the PO, PC, they're all on a smart contract, and the payout is happening basis the receipt. So for example, if you put in your container in your, let's say, storehouse or somewhere, they simply scan it, you see the product quality, all the information in terms of it's been tampered with or not. So you need not have to manually sign a GRN, ask somebody at the plant to actually approve it. All of that is becoming done automatically. So the reconciliation effort which is required there actually is turned down. If you look at SAP, what Salesforce they're all doing, they're all invested in a company called Hedera Hashgraph, in terms of trying to see where blockchain can be used. SAP is also playing around with blockchain for many of these areas. So interesting times. This is an example of the metaverse. For example, the gentleman wanted to talk about cloning. So yeah, we have cloning.
I have another question.
Yes,
Is
please.
it the integration between hardware and software as well? Because you are telling that you are getting the information from the system, and that has been integrated with the blockchain, different processes. So
You can. So depends upon the use case, right? For example, in terms of the banking use cases for fund transfer and other cases, it was simply software. There was no manual element. The example that I showed you is typically for the oil and gas use case, where a particular lubricant was produced at a plant. It was being shipped in a container which was being monitored for security, that nobody has actually tampered with the lock, nobody has opened it. You have a temperature sensor, you have a GPS sensor, and if there is a leakage, if there's any tampering, it is letting the fire services know, the insurance company know. So that's an example of an integration between your IoT sensors, blockchain, cloud services. Because if you look at AWS, Azure, which are the cloud service providers, the most popular ones, they all have simple APIs for connecting your IoT devices to the cloud. And blockchain, etc., the network, all of it is again on cloud. So it's all an integration within your IoT device, cloud, and blockchain is just another software technology. It's nothing, it's just another buzzword, or it's just another technology for making or enabling last mile connectivity between your systems and making things happen.
is it a particular set of program, or like Python or something like that? Or
There are different platforms. For example, as I mentioned, Hyperledger is a popular one, Ethereum is one. So there are different languages which are used for coding. You have Solidity, you can actually make blockchain in Python also. You can do it in Java as well, but there are different protocols. So most of these are open source ones, wherein they've been built by the broader community. For example, IBM actually and Linux helped in bringing out Hyperledger into the community. Then you have companies like R3 Corda, others which are private, which sell you the software. You can actually have a private chain implementation on the licensed software. So, but typically, I like open source. And there are service providers like AWS, which offers blockchain managed services. For example, you need not worry about the network and how you will deploy that as well. So it's a combination of all of these.
Thank you.
He had one more point. You wanted to talk about cloning, so please define cloning here.
What I have seen in our mobile phone, probably, well, changing out the mobile phone, you clone it out and then give it to another mobile.
Imagine this, that you're actually dissecting. So has anybody dissected anything? Did you take biology? Anybody has taken biology in your +2?
Yeah.
Dissected the mouse, the frog.
You didn't enjoy that, right?
We enjoyed it.
Okay. Be careful of this person. Right? If you don't meet your LNDRs, you know what will happen. So specifically, creating a digital model of any of your equipment, or for that matter, anything, right? For example, the industrial metaverse. Now, metaverse is, today if you log into Sandbox, if you're playing a video game on your PlayStation or anything else, it's a virtual world. But typically, what you see is like a 32-bit game. Has anybody played Contra, kids of the 90s or 2000s? Huh. So all the avatars look like Contra right now in most of the metaverse environments. But what NVIDIA, what Microsoft, they're all doing is creating digital twins. So specifically, I can take the example of one oil and gas company during the post-COVID period, or pre-COVID as well. People who are working on oil rigs, right? So there are offshore oil rigs wherein oil is being taken out of middle of nowhere in the ocean from wells which are dug about 1,000, 2,000 feet below the sea to take out oil. Those were being run remotely from people sitting in London, people sitting in Germany, people sitting in Mumbai. That was enabled due to what it does is you wear your HoloLens, you wear a AR, VR gear, you feel as if the entire oil refinery, the entire oil rig has been recreated. So imagine running a shop floor connected with these smart devices. You're able to operate the robotics, anything which is remotely. 5G, the advent of 5G and others will actually usher in the boom for running these industrial metaverses. The other thing that you can do is, if you look at the examples here, this is actually a digital recreation of a car used by a car manufacturer. We have blacked out the name of the car manufacturer. They can actually monitor in real time in terms of, one, what is the health of my production belt. They can also simulate. For example, if a particular point were to go down, a particular machine, a particular product in that entire production line, what is the impact? So modeling for these scenarios, all of that can be done in the digital metaverse. And you can also operate machines if you were to have them with connected devices and they're all connected. Any questions so far on this? So this is also known as a digital twin. So the industrial metaverse would be connected of multiple such platforms and others to create an industrial metaverse. So what's a digital twin? It's a virtual instance of real world object inside a simulation. It can be a model, a process, product or service. The pairing of the virtual and physical environment allows you to analyze, identify problems and simulate things. So for example, all of you have heard about smart cities, right? So the government of India has got multiple smart city initiatives. So you can actually map you get geospatial data from satellites, from GIS and others, from ISRO and others. You can actually model how the city will develop. So let's say tomorrow if there is rains, you're looking at the drainage pipes and others, how they've been kept within Calcutta or other major city. And you can actually model for rainfall and others to see where there will be water logging, what happens if there is an earthquake. So multiple factors, etc., can be modeled. Sorry. This is what it looks like. 3D modeling, analytics. You're running Monte Carlo simulations for different models. But yeah, so this is an example of how it was used for a healthcare client, but open to questions right now.
So I understand the use of blockchain in an environment where uh, we are eliminating uh, the let's say the regulatory body.
For example,
I'll just finish my question. So, for example, power sector. Uh, if you are buying and selling power, you go to the exchange, you find out the rate, and you buy power, right? This takes time, and plus the rates get inflated. The other party sometimes hold, but when it is on blockchain, and it is already implemented in various countries and here, so you're actually eliminating the middleman. Whatever power is available, like solar and all that, person can immediately buy from through the blockchain platform. That intermediary, the exchange is gone. So I'm kind of able to understand it there, uh, but similarly I'm able to understand about the implementation on the traceability part also. Uh, Now, in other cases, like for example, we were seeing that presentation yesterday, wherein on in the screens we are putting the IoT devices and we are getting the temperature and all that stuff, right? Similarly, we also create digital modeling and of our this thing. Now, so there are already solutions available for traceability, right, through IoT and all that. How does blockchain come into the picture in these cases? That's what I want to understand. And how does this blockchain makes this solution better? How if we use some other technology or we go through our simple process of like getting the information from the IoT device? How I mean, like, where does it plugs in?
so I'll break the question into two bits, okay? The first one that you said around power exchanges, right? So how a power exchange works is it's a centralized fashion. So you have a arbitrary body wherein it's a regulator, it's mandated. People, power, let's say generators, power grid, consumers, they're all coming specifically to actually go ahead and buy the power. Now, what if uh, you want to, if you want to have a decentralized exchange, wherein you don't want to have an exchange? So there are two ways of doing it, in a centralized fashion with blockchain and also in a decentralized fashion. So the concept is known as DeFi and others. So typically what will happen is you're a power consumer or a power producer, you have excess in your house, you're selling it to someone else. By using trust, without doing with an intermediary, you're able to sell and buy. That is doable. So that is, in that particular case, you're doing away with the regulator. That's one example. The second case is when you want it to be regulated, but you also want to share information with a regulator. So the way it happens is the node, right? For example, if you want to audit that, a auditor like KPMG can become one of the audit nodes. We'll only read the information. A regulator becomes another node. So all the transaction information, whatever is happening between these parties, all of that can be monitored, and all of that information without you submitting goes to the regulator. Now coming back to the example of the case where you've got preventive maintenance, you've got IoT devices with certain client places. If it is connected to the cloud and other things, it can trigger an email also. What we are saying is you can also, blockchain is not the only way. That's why whenever we want to implement a solution, we look at different technology options. For example, the gentleman had asked in terms of what was the combination, how did you connect the P2P, some of the other processes. So we use a combination of low code, no code platforms, blockchain specifically for the components where data immutability was required, sharing of information across parties was required, and a smart contract could be used for actually automating a particular process, because a smart contract can actually go and trigger other applications also. In this particular case, let's say the IoT device tells you that the conveyor belt that you created is facing some issue, a lubricant is required, or a major fault is happening in about a week's time. Basis the models that you have done, you have information about the entire life cycle of the product. It can actually trigger a simple email to your support team saying that this will be required. That's one particular example. In our example, we have actually automated the entire downstream process of insurance claim. Because the fire sensor, it saw that the temperature was rising, it knew that something was going to happen, the transaction was null and void. because the party which is actually buying the product, it was able to see that मेरे पास सिर्फ खाक आने वाली कुछ नहीं आ रहा. The insurance got triggered, claim will be paid out to you, and another fresh order would be placed in your backend into your CRM system on behalf of the client because money has already been taken. That can be done with a smart contract. Now, depending upon the type of use case and others, there are different, for example, the image that you've seen, right? So let's say that you have a 3D model. Now you are sending that across to your client as an NFT. Your patents, I'm sure that you as a research firm, you have got your R&D team, they must be having a lot of patents, right? A design can be patented. So what you can do is, if tomorrow you convert this, if you convert this into into an NFT, you can have licensing on that. For example, that design can be sent to organizations. They'll be able to print it, use it as an input into a production platform, so that convert it into a CAD or CAM design so that it can be produced, and royalty would be triggered on the number of times that they access it, how is it being used, etc. So all of these downstream activities or transactions can be done with a similar technology. Hope that answers.
Following up with the same question, see, like when we talk of traceability, you spoke about traceability, you spoke about triggering emails, you spoken about taking action, following through actions. These are all things that are being done, presently also
Sure.
is done, through different means, like when we in SAP in our organization, we can do the traceability and all those kind of stuff. And now, I would like to know, like when you talk specifically talking about blockchain, what actually it does, which the other doesn't do? Is it about the security? Is it about that the multiple information various stakeholders are getting, that is being secured? Is that the thing, or there is something more to that?
So that's the primary aspect in terms of one, having information in multiple places, wherever there's an element of trust which is required. Requirement for auditability, traceability, security, as well as ease. For example, if you've got a multi-party ecosystem where you're working with multiple parties, whatever is a sub-process. For example, I'll give you an example from another industry, right? For example, there are companies which actually buy content from content creators. Let's say you're a small-time video producer. You are creating content, or you're a music artist, because you will be having something from the music industry soon. How does royalty work today? Any work of art which the artist produces, it belongs to the recording company. But what blockchain can allow you to do is, they'll own the IP to their music. So typically, if anybody is using it, downloading it, listening it, they can keep track of it. If they want to delete the particular music from your system, it allows you. It is allowing you to do digital rights management on that. So from an IP perspective, royalty, payments, for example, tomorrow this particular content, I'm not taking the name of the organization, it buys $15 billion worth of content from 7,000 people across the globe. So imagine the amount of accounting which has to be done. So specifically, again, picking up on Saurav. So for example, the amount of accounting your finance function has to do, keeping track of vendors, making payments, whatever it is, right? All of that can be automated by using something like this. To your It is. It is. It is. And yeah, but imagine that you have more. For example, somebody is writing content around an article. Somebody is creating a documentary, which is fine because YouTube is only dealing with documentary. When your library consists of, let's say, a different type of media. Media, I mean, it can be a poetry, it can be a video, any type of content, right? Because news articles can also be, you have to get paid. So all of that is a complex landscape. So wherever you have a complex vendor landscape in your particular context and others. So there are technology components which can enable this. This is an added layer of security, let's say, or there's an audit trail. For example, as I mentioned, the regulator need not be reported. For example, carbon emissions. For all listed firms going forward, regulations are coming up from SEBI, which is the Securities and Exchange Board in India. And if you're also planning to list outside, for example, in Singapore or other places, there are very strong reporting requirements from the regulator around the ESG agenda, around the carbon emissions and others. So let's say data integrity, data validity, as well as accuracy, timeliness in terms of reporting to the regulator, that can be taken off by a system like this. Depending on the use case, I can give you examples, but specifically, I'm just trying to explain to you in terms of the pros and cons. Blockchain is not right for everything. It is so earlier it was expensive to implement. Right now it is not. But again, there are different technology solutions which can be better fit in certain cases. So you'll have to evaluate and use wherever it's required. Thank you. Great. Good to see that the crowd has been interactive and bright set of people here. Any other questions on the close? I'll also give you a use case from HR also, how we are using it. So we are, yeah, go ahead.
Because we are dealing with informations and we are having employees across the globe, so we deal with very sensitive information. Since you were talking about information immutability is very important. So how we can protect these sensitive informations from being exploited, because there are various data protection laws across different countries which we have.
So a couple of points, right? For example, I'll come back to and answer your question, but do you know about the gig economy, right? So typically you'll have contractors working and others. So doing a background verification for them, maintaining a record of what they have done, etc., becomes quite difficult. But India will definitely move to a gig economy in future. So for example, KPMG also offers background verification services for candidates also. Other than our audit, advisory and others, that's another service that we also offer. So for example, tomorrow, you want to get a assessment done for yourself, because if you go to another company, they'll again do your BGC. Your onboarding time will take 15 days, 20 days for your BGC. So there are service providers in the US and others. What they're trying to do is specifically get your BGC done once. You update it with any credentials that you've done work in your organization. For example, even within KPMG, we get a lot of kudos, awards, accolades and others. We'll put it up on blockchain so that next time somebody is going to another organization, he can carry all of this record with him saying that I've done good work. And this data belongs to the person. If he doesn't want to share with you, it will not. If you have a blockchain-based system, the person has a complete control over his information. So for example, if he wants to share his BGC report with you, he'll let you access that for 5 days, 10 days, whatever is the requirement. After that, you'll not be able to use it. So similar to how you have a encrypted email, digital rights management, etc., we are seeing quite of that happening in this particular space going forward as well. Similar thing for suppliers. I'm not sure how many suppliers you have. Must be a complex scape.
Almost like 700 odd numbers.
That's huge. So once you're listed, you're already listed, but once you go global and others, third-party risk becomes an important aspect, because vendor risk management in terms of vendor due diligence, vendor finance, cyber due diligence, wherever they have access to your network, etc., becomes important. So you can actually do the, people can actually do the due diligence, share the report with you for onboarding into your MDM tool or whatever it is, share their, let's say they get it audited by a company like KPMG or any other ones. We send you the audit report. You only have the access to the report for the duration that you require. So one, many a times you need promoter information of the company that you're onboarding for the financials, but you don't want to keep it unnecessarily for a longer period of time. You'll have the basic information, whatever they agree to, the rest can be encrypted by them. So we'll see more and more of these technologies being used in these areas as well. Hope that answers, or? Thanks for being an amazing crowd. Saturday, I know it's not easy. You all have a lot of things to attend to. So thanks for being a great audience as well.
Thank you, Siddharth. Sethupragya, would you like to pass on the vote of thanks? And I think it's been a very, very interesting session. And I mean, like, kind of want to share a small anecdote. I was talking to a kid couple of days back. So your kids don't listen to you. So typically your friends will come and say कि यार मेरे बच्चे को समझा दो. मैं उसको बोलूँगा तुम मेरे बच्चे को समझा दो. because अपना बच्चा खुद से नहीं समझता, right? I think it happens with you also. Yes or no? So so the kid was not I mean, like, and his father is from he's done his like graduation from Columbia, masters, graduation from Princeton. नहीं सुनता है उसकी फिर भी, and he's like doing quite well in his life. And so when I had a word with the kid, I just told him this thing, and at the end he said, you know, this is a nice example, I have understood. So I told him that if you have to go to US and you don't know that a plane exists and a ship exists and a car exists, what will you do? So I'll run. I said, if you have to reach in 2 days, what will you do? So he was sharp. He said, oh, I know where you are going, right? But then I said, okay, let's say you're not this sharp. What will you do? He said, I will run day and night. I said, you'll still not reach. He said, yes. So uh, the and then he said, okay, I'm getting you. My father has more experience. He's seen more world, so he can actually share that a plane exists and a ship exists. I get your point. I listen to him. So that's the whole idea. Blockchain may not be a solution for everything. The idea of these forums is to kind of know what is Industry 4.0, blockchain, sustainability, something in finance will come over, so that we are all well versed with what are the options available, so that when we are kind of stuck with finding solutions to our problems, we know what exists in the outside world, what are the solutions available, so that we can kind of use them when required. Otherwise, we'll run fast and we'll run very fast, and then we'll uh, like work late in the evening and sometimes even overnight, but then we'll still not reach where we have to. So that's the only objective. Over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Bhanu. And thanks, Mr. Siddharth, for such an enriching session. To be very honest, I think most of us were knowing the blockchain just by the word, and we are all linked it to the digital currency or the cryptocurrency. But after this session, I can definitely say that the doubt of that or the embargo of the cryptocurrency, we have moved out of that. We have moved out of that thought that it is only limited to cryptocurrency and it can be implemented in our day-to-day lives, in our organizational activities. So thank you for such an enriching session. And once again, warm thanks from the entire Tega family. And we look forward to see how we can implement it and where we can find the use of it and where we should avoid it.
Thanks for being a lovely audience, and the rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.